All right, the
Just want to be
recording
like you.
is starting. Sorry, go ahead, Manuel.
I was just going to say to Fritz, we just want to be like him one day.
I need to do one again and reread my notes and practice.
All right, we'll wait just like 2 more minutes while some of the stragglers join, and then we will get started. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So just a reminder to everybody today, this is being recorded, and after the session, as soon as it's finished processing, we'll be posting the recording to the One Stop, the Faculty One Stop, in the same location as the others. I will also send out a link to that Faculty One Stop page, and so you can access those whenever you choose. Also, just a couple reminders. This is all being done via the desktop client. So all the settings that we've shown you in these previous trainings and the stuff that we'll show you today, a lot of the features do depend on the desktop client. So if you're not using the desktop client, if you're using the browser-based client, client on an iPad or an iPhone, there may be many settings that you will see missing when you are the one hosting. Certainly there'll be settings missing right now because you're guests, but even when you're hosting, you'll be missing settings. So these all presume the desktop client. So make sure that you have that installed, and we will be getting those installed on the Podium computers at the school as well. And then I'll talk about this at the end again, quick foreshadowing for future events. We'll be having a couple more trainings. We're planning next week to have just a general office hours and Q&A time where you can just join to get your questions answered. We might make use of some breakout rooms to do sort of small little group, sort of subgroup trainings if there's somebody who needs help with something specific. And then we do have one more future planned training once it's ready, where we'll go through a classroom and do kind of a demo of an in-class setup. Like, what's it like to first walk into your class, turn on the Podium computer, and actually get ready to lecture on any given day, and how that all goes. So for the agenda today, we're going to be going through some advanced features in pedagogy for 3 different areas: breakout rooms, and then whiteboards, screen sharing and whiteboards, and then finally various recording settings. So to begin us today are Manuel and Ahmad, who will be doing the breakout rooms. So Manuel, I'm going to go ahead and make you host, and you can take it away.
All right. Thank you, Bradley. Well, hello, everyone, again. I hope everyone's doing well today. All right. So we want to take you through a quick overview to start with of the breakout rooms. And before we get into that and then into more in-depth advanced features of breakout rooms, really want to talk to you just for a few moments about why you would use breakout rooms, really from a pedagogy standpoint. How does that enhance our learning for our students and our effectiveness as teachers? So I want to share a couple ways that I've used the breakout rooms in the past and some other ways that you may want to use them. So first of all, if your course is one that maybe has a lot of questions that you ask the students, thought-provoking questions, critical thinking type questions, it would be good then to break them into small groups, maybe 2 or 3, depends on the size of your class, where they can have a little more intimate discussion and really break down those questions and put some real thought into that, some critical analysis. So really good opportunity for the small groups to have robust discussions. And remember, especially if your class is an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, or even 3, having a variety of methods is always very helpful to keep the flow and keep the students engaged. And so that breakout room, you may want to do it after that first 30 minutes of maybe you sharing some concepts, and then you want them to apply those concepts or those truths on a particular question. So that's one way you'd use it. Another way you'd use it would be if you're in a quantitative class, maybe there's 3 or 4 questions on an actual problem. Then you can have them, again, break out into small groups and actually demonstrate the problem. So in just a few moments, we'll break you into groups again so you can get used to that, see what it looks like on the other end of what your students would see. But I would also note that a couple things. You want to make sure that you share with them ahead of time anything that you might think they'll need for a discussion or for a problem. And I'll show you maybe an example of that in just a moment. You also may want to break them out to do some type of presentation or preparation for a presentation. Maybe it's time for them to do team presentations. So you can break them out in their groups of 3 or 4, those teams, to do their final prep for that presentation. And then they can come back into the main room and do their presentation. So there's a whole host of other reasons for using the breakout rooms. It really does add value where you can have more intimate discussions, work on problems. I've used it for case studies, and most of the courses I teach are graduate level, so we use a lot of case studies in the School of Business. I wanted to show you this. Let me share my screen with you. All right, so here's my a class that I taught on ethics and accounting. And we certainly need ethical accountants, amen. So can everyone see my screen okay? This is Moodle. So basically, we would be working on a case study, let's say, and we've talked a little bit about the case, and now I want to break them down into groups of 3 or 4 where they can really get down to the nuts and bolts of analyzing the case study. So what I do is, because they cannot see any longer what you might have shared in the main room, in the main classroom, the main Zoom classroom. When they go into their breakout rooms, they cannot see that. So I post all the items that I believe that they're going to need to refer to actually in the Moodle LMS. And so, for example, here was case 3-2 that we were reading and going over. So you can just make sure that they have access to that. So when they leave, then they can just pull it up. And for example, here's that case here. And you can see the case, and then there's questions that they have to go through. And so what I would do, let's say I had 3 teams, I would assign team number 1, question number 1, team number 2, question number 2, and etc. So you want to prepare a little bit ahead of time for that. So that's again using case studies. Again, there's so many uses of this breakout room. I think it is a valuable tool that we all should probably get used to using a little bit more. So that's kind of the why you may want to do it. Again, it could even be a project that they're working on, and you want to give them 15, 20 minutes in class to be working on their team project. Well, this would be a perfect time for them to do so from that standpoint. So, all right, if you have any questions, by the way, as I'm going through some of this, make sure that you're asking those in the chat, and we'll take some questions, of course, where you can unmic here a little bit as well. Okay, now let's talk about a little bit about the how. First of all, you want to make sure your settings are right. We've covered this a little bit, but I just want to do a basic overview of that. So when you go to InMeeting Advanced on your settings, and this is through the web portal, you can come down and make sure the breakout rooms is actually selected. So, and they also have here allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. And so you want to make sure that the settings are proper before you get started from that aspect. All right. So when we're looking at the breakout rooms, can everyone see that okay? All right. There's a number of items that we can do, of course, when we're doing breakout rooms. Notice here we have right now, let me go ahead. We got breakout room number 1. We can rename that if we like to. We can have other options as well. You can see different options we can do here. Breakout rooms close automatically after 30 minutes. You can set these. Move all participants in the breakout rooms automatically if you don't want to manually set up who you want to go into each breakout room. And then the countdown, you can adjust this. The standard countdown is 60 seconds. So when you're broadcasting into a particular room or any broadcast that goes into all the breakout rooms that you actually have, that's a good opportunity to say, hey, we're going to close in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And then when you actually hit close the meeting, what's going to happen is they're going to have that 60 seconds to wrap up and then rejoin the meeting from that aspect. So make sure you do some prep time. What do I mean by that? So prepare your students before you go into breakout rooms. Don't just say, okay, we're going to do breakouts, especially if it's the first time. Make sure that they know they're not going to be able to see the main screen. So again, that's why I showed you where I posted items in Moodle, where they'll have a tab open where they can actually go to their Moodle and download documents or see important links that they'll need for that breakout room. Also note that if you're recording this for those that are not present, that breakout rooms, when you record to the cloud, are not recorded. There is a workaround, and I haven't tested this myself, but I understand that workaround is you can record to your computer, and if you're the host, whatever room you go into will actually record. That recording will follow you. That's my understanding. I have not tested that yet, but if you do need to record what's going on in a room, you as the host would have to record to your computer and then enter into that actual room. Students can ask you to come in and ask you questions. They can request that you come in as well. And so when students are in there, they can do everything that they normally can do in the main session, basically. They can share their screen with one another. They can chat with one another. Now, again, those chats are not saved unless you go through that process I just mentioned to you. Only what's in the main Zoom room is actually saved from that standpoint. All right, so we can rename the teams, we can move or exchange students. Even if we did it automatically, we can go ahead and do that as well. So I wanted to mention that to you. It's not too late once you automatically assign and you say, well, maybe I want to move this student to another room. You can do that as well. And maybe Ahmad, if you can maybe cover that here in just a moment or two as we shift here in a moment. I think other than why we're using it and the primer of how we're using it, I also think it's important for us to not just prep the students, but in case you need some way to see accountability of what kind of work is being done at that point, or what progress is being made. Maybe Ahmad can speak a little bit about this as well, but you can open a Google Doc and they can invite you and you can see them actually working on a problem or on a page in real life time as well. So you actually know what's going on without going into every room as well. So those are just kind of an overview. Some of this is kind of a review of what we covered in our first video, but I think that should give you a nice overview, a primer of breakout rooms. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ahmad now. And Ahmad, will you just kind of walk us through some of the more advanced features and maybe even let's go into the breakout rooms again as well.
Okay, thank you, Manuel. Thank you, everyone. So what we'll be doing now, we can kind of point on some of the features that Manuel talked about and talk about some of the problems that you might face. And there's one bug that still Zoom didn't fix. Sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't happen, especially when you try to either move some of the team members to different breakout room or when you exchange. So the difference between move and exchange, let me go to the breakout room here and let's say, you can see my menu, right?
Ahmad, you're not screen sharing yet.
Okay, sorry. You can see my screen now, right? Okay, so let me have the breakout room here. And I'm gonna recreate. So I had created a breakout room. Sometimes you miscount or some students logged out or log in or you estimate the number of breakout room that you have. So first I created 2 breakout room. Then I found that, wow, we have 39 participants. So I need to recreate the breakout room. So you can go to recreate, can adjust the number of rooms that you want to have. And again, you can have it either automatically or manually. So I'm gonna recreate all the room, but I'm not
What I like about that too is it'll show you down on that bottom line how many participants you have now in each room.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sometimes like, do I need to have a breakout room of 7 people? Definitely there are gonna be 2 or 3 of them working and the other ones are just kind of waiting for their input. Why it is very helpful and good for Zoom classes. If you have a regular class for 1.5 hours or long classes, and what I mean by long classes, in the International MBA, we have one session is 4 hours and one session is 8 hours. So at least you need to break out room into like maybe every 1.5 hours twice to have all the students engaged and participating. And that would keep them connected over the 8 hours of class. At the beginning of this session, again, I'm sharing some of the good practices. Work a lot with random or automatical assigning. That would create good interaction between the team members. And later, when you get to the level where they need to work on their final projects, for example. So this is where they can you can put them in their actual groups and they can work together on their final project. So let's say this is like, I'm creating 9 breakout rooms. So I have maximum 4 to 5 participants. Okay, and you can see when you mouse over every name, there's move or exchange. When you click on move, let's say I need to move Derek to another breakout room. Derek is in the theology department, and the breakout room number 2, they are talking about theological subjects. So if I want to move Derek to room 2, you click on move to, and you can see which room you want him to go there. So if you click move, then room 1 will have only 4 participants, including me. But if I do exchange, I need to exchange Derek with Belinda, for example. So I mouse over again, exchange who you want to exchange Derek with. So I want to exchange Derek with Belinda from room 2. Now they are switched. Now I have Belinda here, and I have Derek in room 2. So this way you don't want to send someone and go remember who was the students that I need to bring to that room. What happened when you do move, and this is a bug, but if it happens, always ask the students to log out and log in again. Let's say I'm moving Belinda to room number 2. Okay, so I clicked room number 2. So now it works well. Sometimes you move her to the room. So now Belinda is in room 2. Sometimes you still see her name in room number 1. So if this happens, always ask the students to log out, rejoin again, and they will be automatically assigned to the new room. Okay, so I'm gonna try to move her back to room 1. Yeah, now it's working fine. Again, it's a bug, and I've checked many YouTubes and many blogs. A lot of people saying like, yeah, sometimes it happens and sometimes doesn't. One person was mentioning that in order to prevent this to happen, when you send everybody to the breakout room, you as a host, turn off your camera. What's happening when you create a breakout room, you're creating a totally new session next to the session that you're using, which is going to be using a lot of your memory on your computer. So it's better to turn off your camera on your host session, the main session. And once you join each room, you'll be opening your camera to talk to this kind of group. Make sense? Any questions up till now, guys? I know there's in the chat coming some questions, so I think Manuel is.
Yeah. Fritz, you had a question. You want to ask her real quick?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying when you log out, does that mean log out of the class altogether? But Brad says it just says to log out of the chat and then re-log into the chat. Is that correct?
Well, no, what I said is click leave meeting. So they have to leave the meeting and then rejoin the meeting.
Yeah, leave the meeting.
But when you leave the meeting, you're going to have to go back and log in. It's to the whole class, basically. Yeah.
Well, but logging in is separate. So logging in implies they're logging into like either Moodle or their desktop client or something. I just mean re-clicking that link to join the meeting again.
And then rejoin the meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Leave the whole session. Thanks, Brad, for clarifying that. So you leave the whole session and you rejoin again. Maybe you are still on Moodle. You just go and click again on the link on Moodle. Okay.
Jennifer actually had a really good question that I don't know the answer to. She asked what happens when you start the rooms if the student hasn't left. So you've encountered that bug that you were talking about, Ahmad, but the student doesn't leave the meeting and rejoin. If you click open all rooms, what's going to happen? What room are they actually going to go to?
So this person, that's a very good question. Thanks, Jennifer. So once this person is stuck, let's say in room 1 and is not moved to room 2, once you create or you open all rooms, everyone gonna be assigned to certain rooms, but that person will stay in the main session, in the main room, will not be moved to any other rooms. So it gets stuck on the main page. Okay, so that's why you want them to log out or like, I mean, leave the meeting and rejoin again, then you reassign them from the main room into a specific room. Okay? And I don't know how much time I still have, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about the pre-assigned rooms, and if you want to do that. So one feature you need to have before you work on the pre-assigned room is you need to go to the web portal and click on meeting. Let me do that. I'm gonna share. So the web portal, let's say this is the meeting that you have. Okay, you click on it. That's a scheduled meeting. Make sure you go to edit. Just a second. So you go to your meeting and you click edit the meeting here. So once you click edit, you go all the way down. You need to select breakout room pre-assign. Okay. So there's two ways to pre-assign room, and I'll tell you about the benefits of that. If you have, let's say, a case study, as Manuel mentioned, and you want every group to work on it directly from the beginning of the class, so you want them directly when they join the class, start to work on this kind of case. Let's say it's a 1 hour test or case study, they have to do it as a group. So you want them to directly join without wasting their time. So you can directly create these rooms. So you can select the numbers of room that you want. This is room 1, you can have room 2, and you can rename each one. And in each room, once you click on it, you can add the names by entering their email. Let's say P. Wagner at chancellor.edu. Once you enter the email of the person you need to add to this group, you just hit enter. And now you enter the other name, let's say Fritz F. Moga at jessup.edu. So you hit enter. So these are like the 2 people now in this kind of room. If you want to add more people to the other room, let's say I'm adding Manuel, so M. And you hit enter also. So now you have 2 people in room 1, 1 person in room 2, and you can add more rooms as much as you want. Okay? So this is one way. And don't forget to hit save. The other way, you can import from CSV file. A CSV file is an interactive file from Excel where it has, it enables reading some macros. So if you click import from CSV file, you got this menu where you can import your groups from a CSV file. But now you'll ask, okay, what if is there a specific format that I need to follow? Yes. You always click download the template. You follow the same template that they have. I'm gonna click that. And it has 2 columns, so easy. One column. So one column, it's gonna be called the pre-assign, has the same naming, pre-assigned room names. Okay, pre-assigned room name. And another column is email address. So by template, by default, it is designed like this. You put all these emails here, you enter all of them, and then you decide which one to be room 1, room 2, no space, nothing, the same naming that is in the template. Once you create this file, let's say I save it, save, and you close it. Then you go back, let's say I saved it on my desktop. That's the break room. Okay. Then you go and you browse your file. You go to your desktop and you bring the CSV file. Let me see where it is. Test PR. You click on it, you open, it will attach the assigned room. Now it will not, because I have no valid emails. I didn't use real emails. So it's gonna keep on showing verifying email addresses for participants. But once you use the email of the students, it will recognize them automatically and assign them to different rooms. Okay, questions? I see the chat. Sorry, I don't see all the questions in the chat. Any questions up till here, guys? One feature you need to have when you try to pre-assign room, always enable join before host. And this is in the menu of the portal menu. So make sure enable join before host. So you can pre-assign breakout room. Yeah, I think that's what all I have. If you have other questions also. By the way, maybe Manuel mentioned this, when you do recording on the breakout room, you only record on your local computer. You cannot record on the cloud. So make sure this file, you see it on your laptop if you want to share with the students later.
All right. Thank you, Ahmad. So are there any last questions for Ahmad or Manuel about the breakout rooms? I do want to offer just one reminder, one caveat to pre-assigning the breakout rooms, either through CSV or directly adding emails. That will only work if a student logs in with an authenticated account that is using that email. So if they're just joining through their browser, you will not be able to pre-assign them to rooms. Okay, so they have to be logged in with an authenticated account that's using the email address that you're using to pre-assign those rooms. Otherwise, it won't be able to place them. All right, well, if there are no...
There's one more question from Bobby. Did you see it?
From Steve Backers, yeah. So, no, IT will not be preloading the Zoom blocks in your Moodle pages. So every faculty will need to do that for themselves. Obviously, you can talk to your lead faculties and your deans if you need to get extra help. That being said, that was covered, like the procedure for doing that was covered in our basic meeting in our basic Zoom training. So if you go to that link on the Faculty One Stop and go into basic, Manuel takes you through that process of loading that Zoom block into your Moodle page and getting all your meetings scheduled, getting all those settings pre-done so that it records automatically, whether or not you want to have any of those other settings set up by default. So you will need to do that, but we have that step-by-step process, and you can always ask for help as well. Let's see, there was one other question from Bobby. How do we see all the students at the same time in all of the breakout rooms? So if you open up the breakout, again, you guys don't have access to this right now because you're not hosting, but if you have breakout rooms turned on, there'll be a breakout room button at the bottom of your screen, unless you're screen sharing, in which case it'll be at the top. And if you click on that, it will show you a list of all the current rooms and who's in those rooms. So you can click, you can see that at any time just by clicking on the breakout rooms button.
I thought maybe she was wondering if you can actually see the actual students, all of the students in all the breakout rooms, like their pictures. So you can get a list of names, but you can't see all the student pictures, correct?
You can't see all the pictures. You can see all the names, though.
Just the list.
So if you just open it up, you'll see a list of breakout room 1 and then the list of names, breakout room 2 list of names. Yeah.
You can, as the host, go into each of those breakout rooms, of course, so you can see everyone in those.
Right, but my question is there any way that I could see what they're all doing? So for example, mine, they're supposed to be in non-talking mode doing sign language, but then when they all come back, I figured, oh, they are talking when they shouldn't be. So I wanted to know if there was any way I could see what they're all doing. Is there in that there's no way to see all the breakout rooms at one time?
No, you can't join multiple breakout rooms simultaneously. And every breakout room is in some sense treated as its own separate meeting, disjoint from the main session. So if you go into one breakout room, all you can see and any recordings that are done, any chat that's done is localized to that breakout room and nothing else. So yeah.
Maybe I can share with you, Bobby, what I do with negotiation practice. We have different groups and I want to know how much they are bidding on the project at the same time. So by the minute I join different room, maybe their prices get higher than the room I am joining now. So what I do, I use three devices in addition to my laptop. I create 3 users, or sometimes you can create 2 users for yourself, one from the browser, one from the application. So you are joining as a user, like the students, and you put yourself in each breakout room. So you can see at all the time, all the breakout rooms that you are creating, and you know what's going on there. You just need to mute and unmute yourself so you don't get the echo when you join different room. But this way you can see them if they are, especially if you have them like they need to use their sign language, so you can tell if they are talking or just using the sign language.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm answering one more question in chat. Okay, so there are no further questions there. And if you do have further questions, of course, you can continue to put those into the chat and we'll continue to try and answer those. We're going to move on to the next part now, which is whiteboard usage. So a common theme in any classes that you may want to write stuff on a whiteboard that the students can see. You may even want occasionally the students to come up to the whiteboard and interact, throw their ideas on. So we're going to talk through a few of the various technologies. And again, we've already given an intro on those. To find those, you would go to Screen Share, click on Screen Share, and then you would, for the built-in browser or the built-in whiteboard, you would click the whiteboard button. And then that would share a whiteboard, and I'll be demoing that in a moment. But we'll also be talking through a couple of other whiteboard options that you can use in order to display information in a whiteboard setting that doesn't use the built-in whiteboard of Zoom, and some of the pedagogical reasons about why you might want to use those rather than built-in whiteboard. For example, one that we'll give a little bit more time to in a future meeting is the built-in whiteboard, interactive whiteboards that's on that's part of the projector system in each classroom. So you may want to use that built-in interactive whiteboard rather than Zoom's own, and you can do that. So we'll talk through a few of those. But for the first one, let's talk about the Zoom's built-in whiteboard. So again, I would click on Screen Share. I'll click the whiteboard button. You can't see that at the moment, but in a moment you will be able to see the actual whiteboard itself. So now everybody should be able to see the whiteboard as well as some of my menu options. Let me move those out of the way. So here's the built-in whiteboard. Is everybody able to see that? Excellent, okay. So there's a bunch of different options. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through all of these. I would recommend if you want to make use of this that you explore. Right now I'm using a mouse, but I'll talk about some hardware options that you would have if you wanted to have a more natural kind of handwriting scenario. But by default, it's on pen mode and you just click and draw. This is a collaborative whiteboard. So if you're joining from the desktop client, you should be able to click and draw on it yourselves. If you're joining through the browser, I actually don't know off the top of my head if you're joining through the browser. Let's see, I think Fritz, I think you're joining from the browser because you're not authenticated right now. Can you draw on the whiteboard? Fritz says no. So if you want to be able to...
I don't have any control of anything.
Yeah. So if you want to be able to make use of this, you would need to be joining from the desktop client, possibly also the iPad. I'm less familiar with the iPad's client, but it might work through the iPad. But there should be collaborative features. So those of you that are joining from the desktop, you can jump in there and start drawing and writing.
Bradley,
There's some other, oh yes, go ahead.
the menu is grayed out. We can't see the menu at all. It's grayed out.
Which menu? I'm sorry.
The menu for your whiteboard. You're saying that they could go up there and select something, but no one, it's all grayed out.
Let's see.
Can anyone see the board?
I mean, other people are drawing.
Okay.
And
Yeah, if you're using the app on the computer, you will not see the menu. It's gonna be gray. But if you're using any tablet or your web browser, you can see it.
and if for those who use iPads to do this, the menu is in the lower left corner of the screen once the whiteboard is shared. There's a little pen icon. If you click on the screen, you happen to be on an iPad, and you can choose all of your options from highlight to pen to color and erase and all the other things that are available.
So one of just the few features, we're not going to spend a ton of time on the built-in whiteboard. Oh, it says click annotate. That's right. I forgot about that because I'm not the one sharing. But if you, there should be a button that says annotate, and you can click annotate and you can start annotating. Manuel, do you see where that button is? Because I forget where that is.
Yes. Under view options. So where it says you are viewing Bradley Wagner's screen in green, right next to that says view options at the very top, and then select annotate there, and then you can collaborate on this. There you go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, more people are finding it. So there are the standard whiteboard options. You can, under format, you can choose different colors, line widths. You can type, font. There's eraser. One thing to note is based on the permission settings, you can erase your own content, but you can't erase anybody else's content. As the host, the one who started the whiteboard, I can erase everybody's content. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Students won't be able to erase your content or anything you write or what anybody else writes, but the host can erase everything. There's also a clear screen button. So if you, there's a trash can, clear all drawings, clear my drawings, clear viewers' drawings. So with one step, I can clear everything that you did, everything that I did, or just everything, period, and let people start over. The last thing I want to discuss with the built-in whiteboard is the save key. If you click save, it's not like saving it as a single document. Essentially, the save button simply produces a screenshot as a PNG file. Okay, so what that means is it doesn't update. So every time you click save, it will create a new PNG file, and I can click show in folder, and then it opens up the folder and it shows you the two whiteboards. And so if I click save again, now I have 3. So it's not like you're updating a single file. Every time you click save, it creates a new one. So you want to be aware of that. If you're saving often, which of course you always should, later on when you try and access those, the whiteboards, you may find you have 20, 30, and you may want to delete a whole bunch except the very last one. You may not feel the need to save these. You may want to save them in order to send them out to the students, or you may not feel the need to save them because if you're recording this like we are, for example, then obviously they would have the recording to go back and view and see what you're writing on the whiteboard. There's of course also a new page button. And so in the bottom right-hand corner, for my menu anyways, there's a page button and you can navigate between the previous. If you stop sharing and then go back, it'll pick up right where you left off. So within a given Zoom session, stopping whiteboard sharing and then going back to whiteboard sharing, you don't lose any of your work. It doesn't recreate the whiteboard. So I can stop this and then I can start it up again. And you see everything just as it was when I had previously stopped sharing. So it doesn't go away. So it saves all your work in that sense. if you click save while you have multiple pages, it obviously creates multiple image, one for every board. So if you have multiple whiteboards and you click save, it'll create two images. So again, you have to be a little bit careful with the save function because it can get a little bit unwieldy if you press that too often, or you have too many whiteboards running. You could end up with quite a few files to sort through to figure out which one is the final one that you actually want to save and send out to your students. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. There we go. And next, Ray is going to talk about a few of the alternate options, one in particular, but a lot of them will work very similarly, and why you might want to use those alternate options. Go for it, Ray.
Cool, thanks. So one of the options, since we are a G Suite enterprise organization, one of the options we have available to us is called Google Jamboard. And it is a whiteboard that will automatically save. I just put a link in chat for everyone to go to that is a Jamboard that I have set up specifically for this. Belinda just joined, Ahmad's in. So as you can see, now hopefully you should see me writing on this. And you should also be able to write yourself anytime you join. So that should, is everybody able to, anybody else able to? Yep, somebody is. Yeah, there we go. So this has a great advantage. This will save, just like your Google Docs, just like your Google Sheets, this will save on an ongoing basis. So every time it's updated, it will auto save. And then at the end of your session, you can go ahead and you know, have the final file available in your drive, in your Google Drive. So one of the and if you look, sorry, you can, the other advantages of this, you can share it as a PDF if you want, you can make it an image, you can make copies if you need to. It sort of has all the same general functionality that any sort of Google Doc has. One of the things that I like about Jamboard for me is you can, I use it on my iPad, that's what I'm doing right now, but you can keep the video going without, so you don't sort of lose the students, you don't lose the images. So I've got Jamboard on one thing and then the students on the other, which is kind of a nice way for me, at least, you know, pedagogically to collaborate. So it's a different way of doing it, so that you're seeing one thing, you know, outside of Zoom and then seeing the Zoom videos live as you go. So I didn't look, yeah, Stephanie, you should be able to erase. I think everybody can erase everything. I think this is a truly open collaborative tool.
You can disable that. So you can share a Jamboard, just like with the different sharing settings for any Google Doc, you can share a Jamboard where only you as the original creator can edit it. You can even give editing privileges to just individual students or individual people, and everybody else would only be able to.
Domain as well. I think you could do it as a jessup.edu domain as well. If so, in order to collaborate, students would have to log in using their jessup.edu. So, Steve Backers, how did I set it up or create it? This is an app. Jamboard is a Google app. You can download it on any device. You can also go to the Jamboard website and use it from there directly if you want to use a browser-based one. But it's a pretty straightforward deal. I think Bradley just put the link in for Jamboard. So I'm a big fan of Jamboard. I mean, the whiteboard that's built in works too, but I happen to like it because it drops really nicely into Moodle once you're done and gives you a final image. But you know, I recognize it's also, you know, potentially class and subject dependent. So,
right. Quick question on the chat here: can you have a split screen? It shows the whiteboard and the PowerPoint showing at the same time.
For the students, from the students' point of view?
Yeah, so I guess to share screen PowerPoint, and then you have your whiteboard going at the same time.
Yeah, so it would be possible depending on how it's set up. So because the Jamboard is separate from the Zoom app, they can see it even if they're not in the Zoom app, or even if it's not what's being screen shared via the Zoom app. So for example, all of you right now are, or not all of you, but you could potentially be in the Jamboard that that Ray shared with you. But then I can do a screen share. It's a blank screen right now. I don't have anything over there. What's something I could put over there? I don't know. RStudio. So you guys can still interact with Ray's Jamboard, and I could be interacting with it as well. But then I've also brought up this that I'm screen sharing with you now, which is RStudio. It's another tool that I use for something else. So they would be able to see my screen share through the Zoom app and then access the Jamboard separately. No, I don't, Steve. Don't say that. That's not nice. And then they could still see your PowerPoint that you were sharing through your screen share. One thing to note with that, though, is that as far as the recording goes, Zoom only records what's shared through its interface. So if you are doing a Jamboard, but you're not screen sharing it as well, then the writing will not be recorded. I mean, the document will be recorded separately in Google, but it won't be recording and updating and as far as the recording goes. So if somebody goes back and watches the Zoom recording later, they won't be able to see the Jamboard being edited in real time. They'll just have access to the final Jamboard through, the link. So if you want the recording to show you working out a problem, for example, like I would in some of my math classes, I would need to create the Jamboard, but then I would also still do a screen share on top of that so that the recording recorded me writing on the Jamboard as I went along, because I don't want them to just see the final solution. I want them to see as I'm writing it out in context of the recording, as I'm talking through it, or as we're discussing it. So that's something you kind of have to balance. And
hey,
one
Bradley,
yes, go ahead.
This is Gina. Sorry, I was the one that asked that question about the split screen. Can I give you a scenario and then I can talk through why I'm asking that? But I was actually asking specifically about the Zoom whiteboard and a PowerPoint split screen. We've been doing a lot of in-class trivia games and splitting them up into teams. And so we haven't used the whiteboard yet, but I'm now realizing that if I can have the PowerPoint up that pops the question up, and then the three teams, whoever writes the answer fastest on the whiteboard, you know what I'm saying? Instead of, because we've been struggling via Zoom trying to do this. So yeah, that's my question.
That won't work with the built-in Zoom whiteboard, because when you do a screen share of the Zoom, that takes up the entire screen share. So if you wanted to do a scenario like that, what you would want to do is it would be a little bit smaller, but you would do something like this. Ray, you trashed the Jamboard.
The new one if you need it.
That's fine. I'll create a Go board real quick.
I've got one live, Brad. Go ahead and do that one.
Okay. Let me join that Jamboard. So what you would do, maybe Gina, in a situation like that, is on your screen, you would bring up both the Jamboard and the PowerPoint, sort of like half screen mode, and then you would just do a regular screen share. So that you would end up, everybody should be able to see this right now. So you could have, apparently I deleted that. I don't have any PowerPoints ready to go because I don't actually use PowerPoint very often. But here's the PowerPoint interface. Like if you had a PowerPoint, you could have it up over here. You couldn't have it in presentation mode. PowerPoint takes over the whole screen when you're in presentation mode, but you could just have the regular PowerPoint over here, and you could have your Jamboard on another half screen. And so then people would be able to write, and this is all being recorded as part of a single screen share. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Bradley, how did you get that to be two screens? I missed that step. How did you get it half screen?
So you can just arrange windows. So this is a Windows-based computer. So this might be a little bit different if you're using like a Mac. But in Windows, you can arrange the windows to be half screens. I have it set up with my own personal keyboard shortcuts, but Windows also has a Snap to option. So it'll just kind of depend on how you've configured your Windows, but I just have it set for for keyboard shortcuts to arrange my windows in half screens. But I can help anybody with those types of options. But yeah, within Windows, you can set them up to get half screen each. One last thing I wanted to mention is that, I think was the last thing I wanted to mention. There are other online whiteboard options. So far we've shown you Jamboard, which is a third party. There are lots of these. They all have their own kind of different features, real-time collaboration features. Another example would be something called GoBoard. Oh, except I spelled it wrong. Not that. GoBoard. There we go. So GoBoard, create a new GoBoard. And without going into all the features of GoBoard, this offers something similar. Go on, please. No. Okay, fine. It's having some camera issues, but normally I would just press enter now if I wasn't sharing the camera with Zoom right now, and you could go in that and you would have another essentially online whiteboard. And there's a whole bunch of different online interactive whiteboards like that you could make use of. Okay, any other questions about whiteboards, whiteboard sharing, Jamboards, third-party options, anything like that? Okay. Just to quickly talk about a couple of hardware options. So if you're doing this in the classroom, you can make use of the interactive projector and the interactive pens so that you can write on your Jamboard or the Zoom whiteboard like you would without having to make use of a mouse and keyboard. So in one of the future videos, when we do like the actual in-class demo, I'll demo that a little bit more specifically. So I would definitely get familiar with the interactive projectors. They're going to be very useful in this context. If you're sitting at home on a computer like this, you may still not want to use your mouse and keyboard. There are options out there. Some of you, like Manuel, probably or may have your own a Wacom tablet, which is just a USB device that is a little tablet and a pen that comes with it, and you can write on it, and then it puts that right up on the screen. Essentially, it's a mouse substitute, but it looks like a pen. Another option, Wacom tablets can be a little on the expensive side. They have a lot more features. I have to turn off my virtual background to show you this, but another less expensive option would be something like this. This is an XP Pen tablet. So it's the same type of thing. You get a little black tablet. You get a little pen that goes with it. It's a capacitive pen. And if I write on this, it'll move my mouse around and allows me to get kind of that feel as if you're writing without having to make use of a mouse. So you could do it that way. So there are hardware options out there. If you have third-party devices, like if you have a Samsung Note, what are their large oversized phones? Is that the Samsung Note? I think the Samsung Note. If you have a Samsung Note, you could download, like, for example, the Jamboard app and write directly on your phone with the stylus. If you have a Chromebook that's stylus enabled, you can join a Jamboard from there and write it. So if you're using a third-party whiteboard, there are lots of different potential hardware options to give you that ability to write as if you were doing to get that feel for like an actual pen. And if you have questions about hardware or ways to make it work in your specific setup, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk through various options that might be available to you. All right, we're kind of running short on time, but I did want to briefly go through the recording options really quick because that's going to be really important. So I'm going to do a screen share, and then I'm going to bring up the web portal. Oh, there's the Jamboard. So we'll go zoom.us. So you're going to want to be, in many cases, you'll want to be recording the Zoom session, especially since now we've dropped, or we will be dropping Panopto, and Zoom will be kind of replacing Panopto as our primary recording option. And so if you want to be recording it, you do have a few options about how it's recorded. So you go to zoom.us, you'll need to be signed in, of course. You'll go to your account and you'll go to settings, just like when we went through the settings for the meeting settings. But up at the top, there's 3 different tabs, and you'll click the recording tab. And then there's a bunch of different options for recording. We're not going to go through all of them, but I'll try and talk through a few. So in particular, the cloud recording settings, this says what type of recording it's going to be doing, because there are about 6 different options. You can record the active speaker with shared screen. What this means is it'll essentially, whoops, I want that on. It'll essentially record, the recording will be, if you download it, it'll be like a window picture-in-picture mode. So if you like downloaded the recording afterwards, it would show you the primary window as the gallery view, and then a smaller window as the active speaker. Record gallery view with shared screen. That will make the gallery view the primary window, and the little pip, the little picture-in-picture, would be the shared screen. Then you can record each of those different inputs separately. So you can record active speaker, gallery view, and shared screen as separate recordings. So each of those would be a separate downloadable file. So you could download the active speaker, and it would simply be a single video that would just constantly switch back and forth to whoever's actively speaking, or a single video that always just shows the gallery view, or a single video that shows the shared screen. These will default to active speaker in the case where the other option doesn't exist. For example, if you download the shared screen video, but nobody's currently sharing a screen, what the video will show instead is whoever the active speaker is. And then as soon as somebody shares screen, the video will switch to the full shared screen. Right now, I have all of these set to record because I was never able to make up my mind about which one was actually the most useful. And so I just chose all of them. But you can kind of think through that and choose what you would like there. There's also separate files that you can record. An audio only file you can have by default save chat messages from the meeting webinar. So I have both of those selected because, again, I just decided to save everything. I don't know so much about the audio only file, whether or not that'll be useful to anybody. I would recommend, if you're going to save things, save the chat messages, particularly if you're interacting with your students at all via chat, or like in these types of webinar type scenarios where we want to be able to go back and review the chat for questions and things like that. So we have this selected to save automatically the chat messages. And then there's a whole bunch of other options here, but one other thing that I really want to emphasize is the audio transcript. Everybody should have audio transcript. Make sure that that's enabled. What that will do is after the recording is done and it's processing, it will go through and transcribe all the voice. So it's not a real-time closed captioning. It's essentially an after-the-fact closed captioning. And it will then, in the recording, in the browser-based version of the recording, if you have the option of turning on closed captioning, and will actually show those audio transcripts at that time. But that only works if you have audio transcript enabled. It'll also produce a file with that audio transcript, but its real use is, of course, in conjunction with the video in real time, so that you can actually see those closed captioning when you are watching the recording later on. So I would highly recommend everybody turn on audio transcription for their recordings. The closed captioning option is, of course, automatically available when you watch the browser-based version of the recording. So, for example, those of you that watched, this is the, oh, that's an ugly picture. That's still me. Yeah, anyways, if you watch the recording 2 that we did, or the intermediate training 2, it was all there. So there's the primary gallery view, which would have switched to screen sharing. Actually, that is screen sharing right now. And then there's the speaker view over here. And this is the live transcript on the right side. And you can see I already have closed captioning turned on via this little button down here. And so it takes that audio transcript, it time syncs it with the video, and then just shows it right on screen. So if we watch this, to play it back, it would have those available. If a student chooses to directly download those files, which is an option you can make available to them where they can download it, They can still get the closed captioning, but it's a more of a manual process. The closed captions are not embedded into the video. The video is a raw video file. What they would have to do is download each of those separately. So it'll look a little bit different within the Moodle setup, but they will have the option of downloading. This is what it looks like directly on the Zoom website. But you can see I have the different video options available for that Zoom recording, the shared screen with speaker view, shared screen with gallery view, and so on and so forth. So if a student wanted to download it and watch it not through their browser, they could click on whichever video they wanted to download. Then they would have to separately download the audio transcript, and in whatever their video player is of choice on their computer or device, they would have to load the closed captions in. So this audio transcript downloads as a VTT file, and that can be loaded into your audio or your video player of choice, your video player of choice, as a closed caption file. And so once they load the video, load that audio transcript, then they could play it back on their desktop or whatever with closed captioning still enabled. So in general, I recommend that students watch it in the browser because everything's already set up for them. But if for some reason they need to be able to download it and then play it back later, they can still get those closed captioning, but they'll have to manually load in those closed caption files, that audio transcript file. The player that I use is VLC, and that's a video player that allows you to side load subtitles. So, any questions on so far on the different recording options and audio transcription? Let's see some questions in the chat maybe. Without reading through the chat, has anybody been watching the chat? Are there any questions that I should be addressing right now?
Yeah, there's one, Brad, but not related to the recording. Do you want to answer this one, or you want to finalize the recording one?
Let me finalize just a couple more comments on recording. Each person, based on our licensing right now, each person has 500 gigabytes of recording, after which your recordings go away. One of the options that you can choose in here is to have your recordings auto deleted. You can choose that and then select a time frame for that. If you want your recordings to last, you can just leave that off. But if you run out of space, it will start deleting old recordings by default. For a given semester, it should not be an issue. So if you're teaching 12 units of in-class class time, and that works out to something like, I think a total of 168-ish hours of in-class time for if you're teaching 12 units, and divide by 500 gigabytes, you can get about 2.97 gigabytes per recording and still stay under that limit. In my experience, even having all these recording options checked, my recordings average between 1 and 1.5 gigabytes. So what that means is probably for up to a year, maybe a year and a half, even if you had all the selection options selected, you probably wouldn't run out of space. After that, if they're not deleted automatically, you may start running out of space. So this next semester shouldn't be a problem. Into next semester shouldn't be a problem. Maybe next summer, though, you'll want to start trying to check on how much available space you have. I don't know of a way right now to do that. We'd have to ask IT to see how much space is left for an individual account. And then you may want to start either archiving old recordings by downloading them, or just be prepared for older recordings to start being deleted and going away. So that's just something to be aware of. Also, one last thing in the recordings, every time you stop a recording, it makes a new set of files for when you restart. If you want to stop recording, but you don't want multiple files for a single recording, you press the pause button. So stop will essentially stop that recording, and if you start it again, it's like a whole new recording. Pausing will put a break in that current file and then restart that same file when you press unpause again. So just know that there. And that's why our training has 2 recordings here, but I only shared one of them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Any questions on screen recording? All right. What was that question that you wanted me to address, Ahmad?
To clarify a little bit about the difference between the desktop client platform versus the web platform, and how they can get directly to the desktop platform if it is an invitation in their calendar.
So if you open up a Zoom recording, if you try and open up a Zoom recording through a link, you'll generally get a pop-up and it'll ask you, do you want to join through the browser or through the client? Let me see if I can actually demo that. I won't be able to actually join, but if I go to here, so here's my recording. So I'm past due for another meeting. If I click on join Zoom meeting, notice I get this pop-up. Oh, I'm not sharing, am I? I just realized I'm not screen sharing, so you guys can't see anything. Hold on. Let me start screen sharing, then I'll try that again. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm screen sharing. Keep in mind, this is Windows, running Windows 10. This is Chrome. So it might look a little bit different. If you're on a Macintosh, it might look a little different if you're running Safari. But if I click on a meeting through my calendar and I was going to join, so join Zoom meeting, it gives me this pop-up, open Zoom meeting, and it gives me a choice. If I press cancel right now, it would allow me to click this button down here that says join from browser. So if I click cancel, then I could click join from browser and I would open in the browser. If I click open Zoom meetings, that's where it attempts to actually open from the desktop client. Now, if you don't have the desktop client installed, it will instead take you to the download page for the desktop client and ask you to install it. If you click open Zoom meetings though, and it opens right up to the meeting, it means you're actually joining from the desktop client and not from in browser. Okay. So again, if I click cancel right now, I could click join from browser. I won't because I'm currently hosting this meeting, so it won't let me. Or I could have clicked open Zoom meeting and it would have opened within the Zoom client itself. Also, the other way you can know if you're in Zoom client is if you can just open up the Zoom app, you should get something that looks like this on your computer. This is what the Zoom desktop client looks like. And it looks very, this again, Windows 10, but the Macintosh version looks very similar to this. So if you get something that looks like this, that's the desktop client that you want. Oh, I'm not screen sharing again. Oh, no, I am. I am still screen sharing. I have to keep track. Okay. Okay, excellent question. Any other questions that I can answer from the chat?
No,
Okay.
no others from the chat. We want to open it up. Anyone want to unmute and ask questions at this point?
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions at this time, you have another week to think through, maybe try some of this out yourself, and think of more questions. Next week at this same time, we will be having sort of an office hours general Q&A session. So we will meet, but we won't have a specific agenda. So that would be the time to come in if you have questions that you've thought of over this past week, because we've done essentially 3 different types of trainings now, and there should be 3, after today anyways, there'll be 3 recordings at the basic, intermediate, and advanced level. So think of your questions, try things out, and next week we can experiment with that, answer any further questions, try and troubleshoot things. We can go into breakout rooms or whatever else we need to do to continue to try and get you ready. In the weeks following, I don't have a specific time frame yet. Hopefully by next week I will. One of the last trainings that we want to plan on doing is having an actual in-class demo where we show you from entering the door of the classroom what you do to make sure that you're actually recording your meeting, that you're interfaced with students, everything's set up correctly, and you can begin your lecture or your discussion or whatnot. So we're still in the planning stages for that, but that will be coming up in the future. Again, as soon as this recording is finished processing, I will make it available through on the One Stop page. through a link, and it'll be accessible there, and also put it in the invite for next week's meeting. So if there are no further questions, then I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you all later.
Happy
All right.
July.
Yes, happy 4th of July, everybody. All right. Bye, everybody.